And on its cover, Osama bin Laden. In fact, multiple war games were underway on 9/11 itself.
The question was, we had 4 war games going on September 11th, and the question that I tried to pose before the secretary had to go to lunch was whether or not the activities of the 4 war games going on September 11th actually impaired our ability to respond to the attacks.
The answer to the question is no, did not impair our response. In fact, General Eberhard, who was then the commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, as he testified in front of the 9/11 Commission, I believe he told them that it enhanced our ability to respond. There were 2 CPXs. There was 1 Department of Justice exercise that didn't have anything to do with the other 3, and there was an actual operation ongoing because there was some Russian bomber activity up near Alaska.
So, did the war games ultimately help or hinder our response? September 11th was day 2 of Vigilant Guardian, an exercise staged by the Joint Chiefs and NORAD, which simulated hijacked planes in the northeastern United States. Vigilant Guardian is a branch of Global Guardian, a mass Armageddon exercise being conducted at Offutt Air Force Base in cooperation with NORAD. Originally scheduled to take place in late October, Global Guardian was moved to September. The exercise is reportedly canceled after the second Twin Tower is hit. 3 E-4B Doomsday planes remain airborne.
2 government sources familiar with the incident tell CNN it was a military aircraft, but say the details are classified. This comparison of the CNN video and an official Air Force photo suggests the mystery plane is among the military's most sensitive aircraft, an Air Force E-4B. The E-4B is a state-of-the-art flying command post, built and equipped for one reason: to keep the government running no matter what, even in the event of a nuclear war. Ask the Pentagon, and it insists this is not a military aircraft, and there is no mention of it in the official report of the 9/11 Commission. The Pentagon, the Secret Service, and the FAA all say they, at least for public consumption, have no explanation of the giant plane over the president's house, just as the smoke began to rise across the river at the Pentagon.
Barksdale Air Force Base also participated in Global Guardian. Instead of returning directly to Washington, D.C., President Bush would fly to both Barksdale and Offutt Air Force Base before returning to the White House. Another drill, Northern Vigilance, moved fighter jets to Canada and Alaska to monitor a fleet of Russian MiGs on a training mission. Northern Vigilance also placed inputs onto military radar screens, also referred to as phantoms. Inputs are simulated errant aircraft, which appear real to those participating in the exercise.
We fought many phantoms that day.
3 F-16s from Andrews Air Force Base, located 15 miles from the Pentagon, are flown 180 nautical miles away for a training mission in North Carolina. Fort Belvoir, an Army base 10 miles south of the Pentagon, is preparing for an exercise intended to test security in case of a terrorist attack. Employees in the Office of Emergency Management on the 23rd floor of World Trade Center Building 7 continue preparations for Tripod, a biological attack drill scheduled for September 12th. Finally, the National Reconnaissance Office in Virginia begins a drill at 8:45, conducted by a team from the CIA, in which a plane crashes into their building. Also, a number of war games were being conducted that have yet to be fully disclosed.
Ask about the war games that were planned for 9/11.
Commissioner Gorelick.
Could you please be quiet? We have only a few minutes with General Myers. I'd like to ask a question. General Myers, I'm sorry.
I would ask, please, people in the audience to be quiet if you want to stay here. Submitted some.
So, sir, statement. This commission has not answered my questions. I'm walking out. It's a farce. Please walk out. I will. Thank you.
So let me get this straight. On the morning of 9/11, the United States is running drills in which hijacked aircraft go in and out of radar. Fighter jets are flown out of the United States, and planes are crashed into buildings. What a coincidence.
And in terms of what motivated me to bring all the aircraft down, as you see one thing happen, that's an accident. When you see two of the same thing occur, it's a pattern. But when you see three of the same thing occur, it's a program. And so at that point, I decided to bring all the aircraft down.
And so, at 9:45, all airborne planes were forced to land. This order applied to all civilian aircraft. Certain military planes were allowed to remain airborne. By 12:16 that afternoon, the FAA managed to ground over 4,000 planes without incident.
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?
You never would have believed it, huh? How could they be, practicing drills about hijacking airplanes? How could they practice drills about crashing into buildings? What, did Obama give them the script? Oh, excuse me, Obama. Did Osama? That's real close. Did Osama give them the script of what was going to happen that day so they could be practicing that day? Gee, with the compartmentalization of information and the fact that when something happens and they're practicing it on the same day, maybe that's why the air traffic controllers had to ask, or NORAD had to ask, is this drill, is this exercise or real? That's the first thing they said when Boston said, we just had a hijacked plane. Coincidences, huh? When you deal with people like the CIA, do you believe in coincidences? Once again, criminals. Having a wonderful government, but having criminals in it and running it. Not good. Now you say, gee, why are they criminals? Or how could they be criminals? Well, let me show you this picture up here. Okay? Here's your lawmakers. When they passed the first bailout, Barney, the guy who came out of the closet, remember him because he represents me in Massachusetts, Barney's up there smiling, so is Pelosi and everybody else. They just passed the first bailout. $780 billion, they told you. We knew it was going to be multi-trillion. Look at them. Look how happy they are as they stole from your grandchildren. And they didn't save the economy, did they? No, they helped their bankster buddies. And it turns out, this is from the Washington Post, my second bit of news, trying to roll along. I'm getting a little slow. I got to move faster for you. But lawmakers invested in bailout firms. What an interesting title of an article. This is from the Thursday, June 11, 2009, Washington Post. And it says top House lawmakers had considerable holdings in major financial institutions that took billions of dollars in taxpayer bailouts at the end of last year, according to annual financial disclosure reports released yesterday. So, they benefited, did you? As they reached in your grandchildren's pockets, as they stole from them their standard of living. They, look at them smiling. They loved it. Did you benefit? Was it right? Does it seem right to you? Yeah, and I call them criminals, district of criminals. Let's find out. We'll get onto the program with the bailout bubble. All right, here's some thoughts. We got thoughts for you. First off, banksters, they're crushing the economy. Remember, they created these bubbles through a thing called liquidity. Remember Greenspan? Not too hard to remember that name, is it? Green and span. Greenspan and liquidity. Isn't that a nice banking term? It sounds nice. It's not, they didn't say, gee, we're doing devaluation. We're printing so much of this money or creating money from nothing that your money will buy nothing in the future. No. Or your children's money. No, they didn't say that. They called it liquidity. That sounds so good, doesn't it? It's liquid. So,